Hey there, Dice Rollers, Landrum here. I've got another video for Spooktober! I've been going through the Chronicles of Darkness books. Did the original core book a little while ago, and then for October, we're going through all the classic monsters and baddies of Halloween. It's October, you get it. We did vampires, we did werewolves, and now we're doing classic mythological beasts for, Beast the Primordial. This is a new book series. It's not new now, but it's not part of the old World of Darkness that White Wolf had done. This is kind of unique to Chronicles of Darkness with Onyx Path Publishing. The conceit for Beast is that you are a monster of ancient myth. You are a giant, you are a kraken, you are a leviathan, you are a dragon, griffin, you name it, you're it. Inside. Outwardly, you look like a normal human. Inside, you have a soul of a ravening beast and a hunger that must be fulfilled. In the process of feeding your hunger, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, you can, teach lessons, kind of old school Grimm's fairy tale style of love your family because they might be gone, or push past that obstacle because if you don't, you're just going to lie complacent until you get squished. Things like that. Well, it'll make sense in a bit. The big trick to Beast, and the reason that it is a big draw for me, is because Beast is a serious crossover book. It is designed that you can play it completely with a bunch of beasts, and you are a brood, and you guys have your various hungers, and you work stuff out. But it, like the werewolf book that we talked about last week, has ways to encourage you to interact with other monstrous creatures, and you can actually provide them benefits, and you get along with them. And when a vampire goes hunting and feeds on somebody, you can actually get some benefit from that. So it has this kind of familial ties kind of thing, and we'll actually get to that momentarily. So, how did you become a beast? Well, for whatever reason, your character, you used to have nightmares. Probably all the time. It may have been the same one every time, or maybe it's a variety of them, all around a theme. Either way, wherever the people would get freaked out by these dreams and just panicked and just disquieted, and said you found a lesson in them. And you basically took whatever fear was in your heart from that dream, that nightmare, and made it yours. And you pushed on. And over time, you've drew the attention of another beast. And they recognized in you this fear. They give you an option to spread these fears among the human population or anybody else around. Some maybe actually didn't even give you the option. They just saw what you're becoming and said, okay, here you go, boom, and devoured your soul. And in that moment, replaced your mortal soul with the soul of this horror. And once the horror sets in, you have become this beast of legend. Of course, you don't go flying through the air on leathery wings and dragon scale, but you are a beast nonetheless. And now you must feed the horror that is inside you, your partner in crime, this other entity, and then teach humanity through nightmares. Or, just beat up humanity. Guard your territory in the dreamscape, in the Primordial Dream, and then mingle with other monsters. The Primordial Dream is part of the Chronicles of Darkness cosmology, and you have places like Tenebris, which is this world where it's the collective human consciousness, and the Primordial Dream lies beneath it. It is the kind of ancient instincts and the fears that we have that linger beneath all that, nicety that we show on the surface now, the fears that we have forgotten. And the beasts live within this Primordial Dream, and they create a lair for themselves, and we'll get to this, and occasionally will reach out and pull down humanity into the Primordial Dream to inflict terrors upon them and feed from them. Part of that is the devouring that turned you into a beast, and in the process of being devoured by another beast, you join a family. This doesn't necessarily have to be the same family as the beast that devoured you, but often might be, because, like attracts like. Each beast is unique in that it has a family, which is a group of beasts, and they are kind of what their nightmares are centered around. And then you have the hunger, which is the thing that you crave, and that is what feeds your horror and gives you strength and power and satiety. Satiety is going to come up a lot. That is how full your horror is, and therefore how kind of laid back or ravenous with hunger it might be, and that changes some of your different abilities. We'll get to that later. So going through the families of the beasts, you have the Anakim. These are giants. They are specifically the ones who inflict the nightmares of hopelessness. They're giants. You cannot stand against them. Whether this is by physical force or sheer brute strength, or maybe they have some kind of authority over you, or you've just been pinned down and you cannot escape. As part of the Anakim family, some of the powers that you have are related to great strength or resisting being pushed around and stuff like that. The Eshmaki are the lurkers. These are the things in the dark. Specifically, they are the nightmares of darkness. It's dreams of wandering a street alone and then all of a sudden realizing you're not alone. Running from something in the dark, eyes watching you, or maybe just the smell or sudden scratch of claws on your skin and realizing there's something there and just fleeing or avoiding it or just sitting where you are hoping it doesn't eat you. The Makara are the Leviathans. These are nightmares of the depths. Down, drowning, sinking, overwhelmed by crushing pressure, the cold, crushing force, and this could even include just being actually overwhelmed kind of emotionally too. Nightmares of forgotten secrets that you don't want coming to the surface, and wrecked ships. The Namtaru are Gorgons. These are the things that the nightmares of revulsion, the things that you don't want to look upon, the things that are absolutely wrenching, proper fear, not of something coming after you, but of seeing something that is awful. Drawing up nightmares of basically disgust, revulsion, things that don't look right, things you can't bear to look upon, or worse yet, being the thing that your loved ones can't stand to look at just because you've become so hideous. Last, you have the Ugalu, and these are the raptors. These are the things of the sky, and they are nightmares of exposure. Not that kind of exposure, kids. They are basically the terror of being out in the desert, walking, no food, no drink, the freezing wind, or just the staring eyes of your coworkers. That dream of being naked in class and nobody notices and you're freaked out. Well, no, now they notice, now they point, now they laugh. The fear of maybe just being out in the open and knowing something is coming for you and you can't find shelter. You'll notice that with a lot of these families, there's going to be some overlap, and that's a-okay, because if you make somebody in one of these families, say you're a giant, well, you probably have a beast in mind, a classic giant or a cyclops or something like that, but you can just as easily be a dragon, but that could be a raptor. The families are very kind of open-ended, so decide more on the nightmare and the type of creature you are, and then pull from that. After picking out your family, you need to figure out what you hunger for. And these don't have fancy names, so I won't mess them up, I hope. First up, you have predators, and they hunger for prey, believe it or not. They are after the hunt, the chase, and they want to take something from their prey. They must put the prey at the beast's mercy, and you're there to teach them that they should fear the dark, that it is not safe out here. And this can lead to blood and violence, and sometimes it's just a matter of, the threat of it, and not actually necessarily needing to follow through with a corpse. After the predators, you have the collectors. These are the ones that hunger for the Hoard! Sorry, I had to do it. These guys, they want things. And it's not a matter of just buying things, because that's just trading one thing of value for another thing of value. You have not gained anything. Instead, you need to take something from someone. You need to deny it. And it's particularly good when it's something of value to somebody else. Now, yes, that's, you can do gold, riches, money. That's easy. Or if you're just the terrible, terrible collector principal who takes favorite toys from children and keeps them in your drawer, you don't ever plan to give them back after class. They're just going to disappear in your drawer, and that's your hoard. And you can be that kind of monster. Next, the Tyrants. And these are the ones who hunger for power. They teach people their limits, show them something stronger than them. And, they might teach them a lesson about pushing past an obstacle, breaking past their limits, or just learning how to get around something. And these monsters, these beasts, shove people up against walls, yell at them, and are a dominant force. As opposed to the predators, who actually want to inflict pain, the Tyrants want people to look up to them and, revere them as being more powerful than them. The Nemeses are those who hunger for punishment. Sorry, no Punisher joke here. But these are the ones who have their own set of rules. Generally speaking, because these people were once human, these are the usually human societal rules, but it very well could be a rule that's very, very specific to that particular beast. And if you've broken that rule, you will be punished. What that punishment is usually fits the crime. Notably, they must learn what the rule was, and that they broke it, and they have to live to remember it, and, pain is a good way to remember that. Last, you have Ravagers. These are the ones who hunger for ruin and destruction. Where the predators hunt prey, the Ravagers actually want to have something that they can break. Burn down a house, destroy a laptop, kill off the mayor and ruin an entire town. That's a really, really big one. Whether it's on an individual, a family, a neighborhood, a city, you want destruction and that panic and crisis. With those two selected, congratulations, you have a monster. But we got to flesh it out a little bit more. You got to decide what it is with your family and your hunger in mind, what it is that you, at the pickiest of days, what it is you really enjoy feeding from. Is that one of the examples in the book is a grandmotherly woman who basically has a rule: don't mess with the kids, and so she hunts people who mess with kids. In one case, it's a college student stealing candy during Halloween. Hey, appropriate October, see how this works out. But, you could also go after people who mess with kids in other ways. And so it is up to you to decide that. The reason this is important is because on one end, you have your satiety. And this is either I'm really, really full, or I'm a ravenous beast. At the ravenous beast, really hungry stage, you'll deal with anything that comes close to your preferred meal. If you're really satiated, you get really, really picky. And so you need to establish this up front of what it is that you really, really like to eat, and then what are some, offshoots that are okay substitutes. You also need to determine your legend and your life. The legend is basically a representation of the kind of beast you are. Using the family and hunger that you have, this kind of finalizes the type of hunting that you're going to do, and the behavior and style in which you sate your hunger. Some examples are that you'll be like a judgmental one, and which kind of fits with punishment, but maybe you bring down judgment on other people. The tyrant who hungers for power may see somebody who is grasping for power themselves and go, no, and judge them not worthy. Or you may be watchful or relentless and constantly chasing after something. And that can be how you actually inflict your hunger upon people. And this is also how you recoup willpower. 1 willpower for acting on this behavior, and then all your willpower if you manage to do something that might endanger yourself or alienate your loved ones if they found out. Then you have your life, which is what the beast was back when you were human. So this could be, you were parental, you were shy, you were loyal, things of that nature. Similarly, that's how you will also recover willpower, either little bits or lots. Next, we need to determine if you have any kinships with other monsters or near monsters, non-mortals. Background for beasts basically suggests that all the monsters in the world are somehow related to the Dark Mother. And this is the creature in myth that gave birth to all beasts. So this could be any number of mythological deities, in fact. There's no written lore or anything like that. Beasts aren't that organized. But, there's a reason to believe it, because by their nature, beasts have these connections. And basically, if they spend time with other monsters or non-mortals like changelings or mages or sin eaters, geists, they can draw on those connections to give themselves powers. They can also use those connections to give gifts to their, as they see it, little siblings. Some of the different ways this comes out is you have family resemblance, wherein you can actually look and recognize monsters. Unless they're going out of their way to hide what they are, like vampires trying to make themselves look human, you can actually just look and recognize, oh, that's a vampire. Oh, that's a werewolf. Might not get all the details of what type of werewolf, what kind of vampire, what powers they have, but you can recognize them as monsters. You also have a passing resemblance, which is your ability as a beast to kind of imitate their appearance. And these things combined actually using the social maneuvering rules for interacting with people actually allow beasts to have a default good standing with any monster that they meet. They not necessarily mean that they're going to be your best buddy, but you can at least go say hi, and the vampire's not going to immediately lunge for your throat. In terms of more familial connection, you also have mother's kiss. Don't worry, it's not too creepy, guys. But by sharing blood, okay, that is kind of creepy, a cut or a wound or something like that, and then applying it to one of your siblings, werewolves, vampires, changeling, Promethean, all those guys, you can actually, based on your die roll, give them free successes that they can just apply. Or just add to dice rolls. Numerous different things like that to use their supernatural powers, kind of giving them a little, jump. It, however, doesn't work for you, or I believe any other beast. But why give these other guys these buffs and extra powers? Well, that's because of family dinner time, guys. By using family dinner, you can actually restore and regain satiety by just hanging out with your monstrous little siblings while they go do hunt stuff. Just by being there and observing the hunt, you don't necessarily even need to be part of it. You could just be watching from a distance, but you got to be there. You gain 1 satiety. If that hunt actually results in actual feeding, something gets eaten, vampires are probably the more likely candidate. Changelings have some stuff too. Werewolves, they kind of look down on that, but it could happen. Then you'll gain more satiety. And then if you have family ties to this creature, you get even more satiety. And with a maximum of 10, and you're sliding along this gauge, a potential up to 3 it can be a big swing. And I mentioned family ties. This is a condition that you can put on another monstrous thing, and it gives you a connection to them and supports different abilities, giving them extra dice rolls, or you giving dice rolls to interact with them. And it basically builds up that connection in a, instead of just a roleplay sense, but actually some dice bonuses too. And actually every time you go on family dinner with these folks, it actually gives you additional die for applying the family ties connection to one of these friends. Because, the best way to get to know somebody is while they're eating, talking about having all these different family connections and stuff like that. And we haven't talked about it in the previous videos, but there are gateways that one can open. Werewolves opening it into the shadow is one example, but changeling have ways into the hedge, mages go into the astral realm. All these things we're going to cover later. But beasts have the skeleton key, and they can basically use any of these portals to, instead of go to their normal destination, go into the Primordial Dream, which links up all the various unconsciousness, and is where the beast's lair is. We'll get to the lair later. They can also, if they don't want to use one of those existing portals, they can also use a victim's nightmares to shoof into the Primordial Dream. This is actually a really great ability. It's called Under the Bed, which I think is absolutely terrific. Unfortunately, it requires somebody to have been around when you were doing nightmare-y, beastie things, and then you have to go to where they're sleeping, you inflict them with terrible nightmares in the process, and you automatically reveal that you're a beast, and they're considered hostile in terms of all social maneuvering, so it really wrecks relationships. So only use this on people you don't really care about, and they're just a useful tool. Talking about going into the Primordial Dream, one of the things you can do is hold the door. Hodor. I made that joke. Moving on. It lets you actually step through the Primordial Dream and just kind of hold the door there, and all your non-beast buddies, come on guys, come on in, everybody in, which is a useful thing for allowing you to hop around and kind of be a taxi service for your little siblings. Of course, once they're in the Primordial Dream in your lair, there might be some other issues, which leads us to the Be My Guest ability. I mean, Beast, Be My Guest. It's from Beauty and the Beast. Duh. Anyways, this actually allows somebody to enter your lair whenever they wish, and actually shields them from the breaking points of seeing their lair in the Primordial Dream and in all its terrible nature, and actually makes them immune to the weird and wonderful environmental effects that you inflict in your lair. Alright, so all this talk about Primordial Dream and a lair, what is it? The lair is the place that your horror resides. This is the spiritual entity thing that replaced your soul, and it is the physical manifestation, metaphysical manifestation of the horror, the beast that is within you. And it could be a classic looking one, it could be something of your own imagining, it's up for you to decide. It lives here, and you must protect it. The first chamber that you have in your lair is the heart. If the heart were to be destroyed, if the horror that lives in your lair is to be destroyed, then you die. So it behooves you to create additional chambers to keep things from getting into your lair. That should be the last redoubt. And adding chambers requires you to find a physical location that somehow echoes and is resonant with your lair's already existing conditions. The lair itself can be given conditions like it's freezing, or it's flooded, or it's dark, or it's sharp and jagged, and any numerous different effects that basically make it more maze-like, or more dangerous, and more homey and roomy for you, because these things that are the lair that are applied to the lair, you are immune to. So if your lair is utterly dark, guess what? You're immune to darkness. Is it flooded? Well, congratulations. You're immune to being flooded. Or in this case, you can breathe underwater and move easily. So once you have found something that is relevant, resonant, I believe is the term, to your existing lair, just by a little bit, then you can draw a connection. But it requires another thing. Either you inflicted a nightmare upon somebody and got an exceptional success, so by default 5 successes, sometimes you can do it with 3, but you have to get an exceptional success on a nightmare, or a mortal lost integrity or vampire lost humanity, one of those kind of things. They lost something while you, as the beast, were there, or somebody lost one of those stats while you weren't there, but you can research it and find out what it was. Then, once one of those 3 things has happened and it's got that connection to your place, you can draw them in, and you can draw a metaphysical copy of that location into your lair, and it becomes a new chamber in your hive. All these chambers are connected by burrows. You decide what the burrows connect to what chambers. And so you can make this maze-like connection of different rooms, all to guard your heart. You can also connect your chambers to the chambers of other allied beasts. And you can do this kind of forcibly, just being like, hey, you've been hanging out with this guy and you've got a connection. Okay, now I'm going to make this connection. They can resist if they're, not your buddy, or they can just let it happen. And this allows you to move through. And so you now have access to their lair, which potentially means that you could strike at their heart. Which if you're after somebody and you want to kill them, that's a good way to do it. And if you're allies, well, let's make sure you're really good allies. All these different chambers make up your lair, but there are other things outside of just your lair. You have a whole network of these chambers, basically all the chambers in a region, and they're ruled over by the apex. This is the apex monster in the area. I do say monster because I don't mean beast necessarily. While it is often a beast or can be a beast, if you have a powerful vampire prince, they are probably the apex. Unless there's somehow a beast that is more terrifying than the vampire prince. Or maybe it's a werewolf pack leader. Any of these things can be the apex, but they may not be aware of it. Regardless, whoever is the apex tinges all the chambers anywhere with some kind of tilt. And this allows them, especially if they're a beast, to move into any chamber they want because of that connection. This is all stuff in the books, die rolling. I'm trying to keep it short. One other way you can actually make a connection to another beast's lair is if you set up a room and you make it a chamber in your heart and they come along later, or maybe at the same time even, and also make it a chamber in their lair, well, now it's the and they're kind of superimposed on each other, and whatever you do, it happens to theirs too, and you kind of share this space, which allows for some really cool linkages, but if at any point you decide, hey, I'm going to collapse that chamber, I don't want it anymore, it collapses on your end. Your buddy still keeps his, and he can't stop you from collapsing all the cool stuff you put in there, and you just take your stuff, and they're just left with their own stuff. Once you've created a lair, and you have all these different chambers, well, what's the point of them? You got this cool little Primordial Dream thing that you can invite people to come see and check out, but what gives? Why do you care? It's because your connection allows you to drag stuff from there in the Primordial Dream and drag it into the material plane. So, using our little Leviathan example, you have a flooded or let's not do flooded. Flooded is really hard to pull off in the real world. Downpour. We say that there's a downpour in their lair and it's just constant rain and perception is low and it's muggy and it's just awful. But once you have that connection in a physical room, say you set off the sprinklers at a bank and now, hey, look, there's a downpour. Now you can use those connections, that resonance, and drag in other powers, other lair affiliated tilts into the real world. So, if you have a place that is absolutely drenched in rain and it is utterly inhumanly dark, not like nighttime, but dark, sealed into your room, well, set the sprinklers off in the bank and then impose the darkness tilt onto the entire bank and everything goes dark. And of course, because, well, it's darkness, you're immune, and your vampire buddy, well, he's immune, and hey, look, we could go just hang out in the bank. I don't know what we're doing at a bank with it, we're probably robbing the bank. You have these different ways to kind of inflict and use these powers to, cause destruction or cause terror, and this is one of the ways that you can actually feed your hunger. You go inflict terror upon the people and make the lights go out and you're there with them. And if you're a lurker who love the whole hiding in the dark kind of stuff, you may very well be able to feed just in your normal mortal body, not doing much more than turning the lights off and scaring the pants off somebody. The other abilities that you have that are more of your flesh and blood, let's kick somebody's ass kind of stuff, are atavisms. And these are, they shape the beast to gain power but with no actual trace of supernatural appearance, at least to normal humans. So you may take some kind of lethal claw ability that lets you rend flesh with a wave of your hand, ripping through armor, and all they see is your normal mortal hands slashing and ripping and rending flesh. Now, those who have supernatural sight would actually be able to perceive a kind of overlap and see that, something is going on. They might not know immediately what it is, but they know something supernatural is going on. These can be powered up by spending satiety, and then by default actually have more souped up versions if you're on low satiety. So if your horror is hungry, these atavisms are kind of beefed up. They might do more damage, they might inflict effects on more people, have a wider range, things of that nature. And then you have nightmares, and these are powered by your humanity through the beast, kind of. Basically, you're inflicting primordial fears, things like your teeth are all falling out, or you're never going to be good enough, or things of that nature. Absolutely terrible, humanish fears, and they're waking nightmares that you can inflict on somebody. And you have a large number of them that are common to all beasts that they have and are themed. And as a player, you can cosmetically theme them to kind of, your particular beast. But this is where that kinship comes in. Say you have a good buddy of yours that's a vampire or a werewolf or a mage, and you can draw on that connection to create a nightmare that is related to them. And this is more or less the way you create new nightmares. Because you have the base default ones that are kind of generic, but then you use these kinships to generate new nightmares that are unique and are themed off of your friends and your buddies. Isn't that so cool? There's a bunch of broad examples that are given in the book for vampires and werewolves and certain breeds of vampires and certain breeds of werewolves. So they give you kind of an idea, and then they actually have a nice little breakdown for how to make your own nightmare and make sure that it's balanced and fair and fits with all the others. That's a nice touch. But I'm talking about all these things of inflicting pain and horrors and threats and fears and who's the bad guy here? You're the beast, right? So who are you dealing with? Vampires have Strix, werewolves have spirits and other werewolves, and what are you up against? Well, you're a beast, so naturally there's a hero coming to stop you. And this is where, when you are a really, really good beast or a bad beast, a hero might arrive to stop you. And this is a really, really cool mechanic that I enjoy because basically this is your chance to play up Beauty and the Beast. Because the Beast is the good guy, and he's hanging out with, Belle, and there's some weird stuff going on there, but he really is a good guy. And then you have Gaston, that jerk, who actually really doesn't care about saving Belle, and actually, to be fair, he probably doesn't really care about killing the Beast. But what he is in for it is everybody to worship him. They're after that hero worship, after that glory and renown. These are people who got those same fearful dreams that you did. But rather than turn them into lessons and making themselves better, they kind of spat upon them and saw something terrible to kill. They're not out to protect anybody. They're in it for themselves. These guys are kind of disturbed, and they don't have powers of themselves. They actually have powers because of you doing beastie things. They can gather up followers, and they will come to fight you. The thing is, you're a beast. Unlike your vampire friends who, kind of the sunlight, werewolves who have the whole silver thing. You're a beast. You have no innate weakness. What are they going to do? Well, see, that's where heroes are dumb. Heroes imagine that you have a weakness, and so then they discover a weakness, and all of a sudden, oh crap, you now have a weakness. And this is, there's rules for it, and I'm not going to dig into it too much, but basically they can research these things, or just believe, just interacting with you, all of a sudden realize, aha, now that I've interacted with you, I know that you're actually weak against this thing, or that thing, or you can't stand the touch of this thing, or whatever. Just by getting to know you, all of a sudden they know what really can wound you. Now, the only time this actually happens is if you're smack dab in the middle of your satiety. If you're very hungry, your rampaging horror that's inside you will fend off any attempt at this revelation. And if you're really full, well, at that point you're too human for them to actually really hit you with what they call the anathema. But if you're kind of in the middle where you're just content and your horror isn't really all that hungry and you're not too much of a beast and you're not too human, you're right there in the middle, you've gone soft, and that's when the hero gets you. Now all of a sudden you've got this anathema thing to deal with, and it's actually going to be a problem. Depending on which way you go with your satiety, you can kind of shrug off some of this stuff, or you can, if you go completely sated and put your horror to sleep, well, then you're okay. And if it's really, really hungry, it kind of lowers the effects a little bit. But one way or another, you've got to figure out how you're going to deal with this hero who's out to kill you. Because these heroes hunt beasts, and some of them have killed before. Higher level heroes, which, I mean, your dungeon master, your storyteller, might give you a high level hero who's already killed before. You don't necessarily get to start with a low level one. Might have some gifts already. They might have superhuman strength. They might actually have the power to they don't have to come meet you. They can go research you and come to a conclusion of what your anathema is. Or scarily enough, they may find the physical place that mirrors a chamber to your lair and open the doorway directly into your lair, coming at you in the dream. And this is a problem because that's where your horror is. And if he gets killed, you're dead. So, all this stuff for a crazy crossover book that is very, very open. There is not a lot of story that is built into Beast. It is very much designed to go be a fairy tale beast that inflicts terrible nightmares and teaches lessons, or just savage any mortal that comes near you. Deal with heroes that come to stop you, and then interact with your cousins. This is a great way to do a one-man out campaign where you have a bunch of werewolves that also are hanging out with a beast. Or maybe a bunch of beasts, and they kind of adopt that one lone vampire who doesn't know what's going on. You can kind of mix and match, but I highly suggest not mix matching too much. But Beast is designed to interact with all the other games very, very easily. And you could actually do an all-Beast game. And then you just happen to interact with a mage neighbor, and then there's a werewolf pack down the way that might need help. Different stuff like that, because Beast basically is the big brother to all these other monsters. I feel like I want there to be more story, and there is some built-in like story suggestions in the book, but I want a bigger story, like the werewolf has, or the vampire has, or, as we'll see next week, the witches, the mages have. Lots of exploration, lots of mystery, and lots of magic. So, as always, let me know what you think down in the comments. If you got questions, this one's kind of new. It's kind of weird. I haven't seen much about it online. So if you've got some experiences, please do share them down below. And keep rolling them dice. Thanks, guys.